This is Celebrity Court of Public Opinion.
And I'm Al Reynolds, your host and judge.
Each show, there are 4 celebrity cases, 3 real attorneys, 1 verdict, guilty or not guilty. This is Celebrity Court of Public Opinion.
Hey, listers, what's going on? We are back, and today is Thursday, April the 23rd, 2026. All right, welcome back, everybody. Sorry about Monday, but I was taking my communications class and my entertainment marketing class to New York City. So nothing like experiential learning. They came first, but you were still in my heart, everybody. But anyway, back to Celebrity Court. Tonight, everybody, we got 4 cases, 4 public messes, and 1 question hanging over every single headline. When does celebrity chaos become legal exposure? Well, tonight, we're going to learn the breakdown of it all. First, we have David is facing major criminal charges, and the public wants a verdict faster. They want it right now than what the courtroom can crank out. Also, Lisa Hochstein is accused of allegedly planting a hidden recorder in her ex-husband's car, and the divorce welfare may have turned into a felony exposure. We're going to have Counselor Sean break that down. Todd Chrisley, oh my God, he's so funny, but not funny enough to escape a creditor hunting for $750,000 in a judgment tied to an alleged attack online. And guess what? Collections, they don't care how famous you are. And last but not least, one of our favorite young rappers, Ice Spice, is pushing back in a court in a wig lawsuit. Yes, you heard me correctly, a wig lawsuit, where one side says pay the $20,000 and the other side says stop being so dramatic. Now remember, this is not a press conference. This is not spin, and this is definitely not mercy, not in my court. This is Celebrity Court of Public Opinion, where I personally bring the mess. My attorneys, they might teach you about the law, but you, the jury, my A-listers, you decide who's embarrassed themselves the most and who finds themselves guilty or not guilty. I'm Judge Al Reynolds, and tonight I like to think of the docket as being straight down filthy. All right, now before we get started or before we get into tonight's legal foolishness, please do me a favor. Can you just please possibly hit that like button? Also, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I've been hearing a lot of you guys talk about you not getting the notifications, especially when the show's been rescheduled. So I need you to turn on your notifications. Please do me a favor tonight and turn on your notifications so that when we push an announcement to you, it comes straight into your inbox. And if you don't mind, as we always love, let's jump down in those comments tonight. And if you're watching live, I need you to do one thing for me right now. Tell me where you're watching from, because I'm nosy and I need to know, because also there might be a prize for the person who is watching from the furthest away. All right, come on, jump down in the chat and let me know, where are you watching from? All right, and if you're watching live, tell me, like I said, where you're watching from, because you know I'm nosy. All right, of course, I'm not in this courtroom alone. Joining me tonight are my 3 legal beagles who know how to cut through celebrity spin. Sometimes they know how to cut through social media nonsense, but they definitely know how to help the public with all this confusion. But they don't necessarily know how to teach you internet law school graduates that what you learn on Google ain't really law school. All right, please help me welcome Counselor Shaton Turner, Sean Carter, and Jason Weiss. Counselors, welcome back to Celebrity Court.
Happy to be here, Your Honor.
All right. I'm so excited. I'm in Pittsburgh where the NFL draft is, and I got to see the first pick with Fernando Mendoza, and I just love that kid. So I'm very excited tonight.
All right, welcome. Glad you were able to make it tonight, though. I need from all of my counselors, I need clarity, I need precision, and frankly, I need one of y'all to stop me if I get too messy. Although, honestly, you're probably not going to be able to stop me. Before we get started, let's check out where some of our who's joined us in the chat over here. First and foremost, let's start with Caramel 1977. Thank you so much for starting the show off right with the super chat. You're going to make me marry you, I swear to goodness. Also, Sandra McGee, come on in here. JP Mills, come on. Nisha Phillips. Colette Davis says she just got back from the Michael Jackson movie, and she said it is fantastic. Brian Simone Adams, come on in, says, hey, Al and the Legal Beagles. David 62 151. Hello, SL Warrior. At a time. Wouldn't be the same without you. New York Marie. So glad to see you. Esther Stone, the Deliria Washington, Rizland 11, Tracy Odom, Spicy Too Hot, AX Michael. Seems new, but I'm glad you caught a live. Come on here because we got the tea is brewing. Leandria, come on in. Regina Christians. That's my school, college classmate. Come on. You know her as well. Shatan. Doreen Pierce, come on in. Come on. Charlene Lambert, come on in. Sharonia K, come on in. Everybody, Dominic Starr. I was getting ready to get on, getting ready to get attitude, Dominic. Thank you for joining us. Who else do we have? Cheryl W9016. Everybody, come on in. Okay, let me get back to business here. All right. Tonight, I'm not just looking for legal analysts. I'm looking for what we call legal reality. And jury, that's you, A-listers. I want you to start watching closely because just because someone sounds confident does not mean that they are correct. And one more thing, we've officially launched the brand new Instagram page for the show. It is at Celebrity Court of Public Opinion. And my bailiff tells me that the count of follows is 132. Remember I said I wanted 150 by tonight? If y'all could please go to Instagram and hit that follow button. I really appreciate it if by the end of tonight's show that we could get to 150. Come on, everybody. Go on over there to Celebrity Court of Public Opinion and see if we can get to 150. Now, remember, over there at Celebrity Court of Public Opinion, this is where the jury keeps talking after the show. So that's you. And this is also where we post updates, case clips, legal questions, and all the public mess in real time. So go follow, tag it, share it, because court may adjourn here. Public opinion, guess what? Never clocks out. And one more thing, a lot of you have shared that you are not getting the notifications. I want to go over this one more time. Please turn your notifications on. You have to turn your notifications on. We have on the screen here exactly how to do that. Okay, tonight's docket is stacked. We have major criminal cases where the difference between suspicion and proof could decide everything. We have a divorce situation where privacy may have been treated like an optional rule. We also have a close to $1 million judgment showing how online accusations become real life debt. And we also have a celebrity wig dispute where contracts, reputation, and receipts are all fighting for camera time. So it'd be safe tonight to say that tonight is definitely about some ego. It's definitely about privacy, receipts, and consequences. And what happens when fame, meets facts. Court is now in session. Now, a quick legal note that I got to share with everybody. Please understand allegations are not convictions. Lawsuits are not verdicts, and everyone discussed tonight is entitled to the legal process. But guess what? In this courtroom, we don't give a damn. And on here, we examine behavior, optics, exposure, and whether the public has already made up in their mind before the evidence has finished speaking. All right, with that in mind, our first case is our heaviest case, and that is David. You've all been reading about him. This is the type of case where the internets want instant certainty. They want him convicted, and they want him convicted right now. But the law, you got to remember, moves on evidence, procedure, and proof. And that is why this case is so volatile. Because one major criminal allegation entered the chat, everybody suddenly becomes a detective, a prosecutor, a forensic expert, and a jury foreperson from their couch. All right, I want to toss this over to Sean Carter. Sean, this one's tough, man, because I want to say, in public opinion, David is toast. But talk to me about this case. What's going on? And I thought I saw a pretty good analysis as to why it's taking so long on TMZ with Harvey. Can you bring us up to speed with this case surrounding David?
Sure. So let's go back just a second, a year. On April 23rd, it's actually April 23rd, 2005. So a year ago today, 14-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez went to visit David, her favorite pop star and looks like a boyfriend. And that's the last anyone ever saw of her, sadly. She, about a few months later, September 8th, 2025, she was found in pieces in the front trunk of David Burke's Tesla. Now, David was out of town at the time, but the car had been abandoned while he was on this 4-month world tour. And as a result, it was just, the car was impounded. They noticed an odor. They opened it up. They found this decomposing body. took them a while to have forensics and figure out what happened here. They came to the conclusion that the young woman had been stabbed, and that was the cause of death.
Okay, hold up, counsel, because I want to be very clear about something. He didn't just meet her one day. That's not how this happened. They've known each other. She's known him since she was 10 years old, allegedly. So they've known each other for years before the incident happened. It's not like a fan showed up at his house.
Good point.
And then she went missing. That's not how this happened. In fact, bailiff, let's show the video. They have been seen out together. They do lives together. Bailiff, let's show us a live that we're familiar with.
Where's your media
I personally don't.
Yo, I media trained you.
No, you didn't.
That's controversial.
It's controversial of.
Really good.
Okay,
It's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my! Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes. Everything.
Okay, Jason, let's go to you really quickly because the issue here is for me, right? They've had a long-standing relationship, and she was as young as 10 is what the rumor allegedly is saying. He's been in contact with her. At the time, he was 16, but does that still make it right? But over the years, they've had this friendship, relationship, dated. So tell me, this is what makes it so ugly for me. He's 21 now. She's 14 now. Why are they even in the same room together?
They shouldn't be, and that's where part of the problem is. Supposedly, there's different stories on the internet, as that he paid the parents to allow her to spend time. There's stories that she ran away from home and nobody, quote unquote, knew where she was or couldn't get to her, which, it's very hard to see where she is when she's live streaming in his home. So, nobody can ever figure that out. But there was just a lot of shaking of the head, and this does not make sense. How this was allowed to start when she was 10 years old and he was 16, and then she was 14 and he's 21. And, there's just a lot that just doesn't make sense. And this is going to unpack a lot of things. And I personally believe this does not look good for him.
All right, let's go to you, Attorney Turner. My question is the basic question, which I think all of us are thinking. When the public has already decided guilt before a trial, if you were representing him, what is the first strategic move for the defense?
They're going to have to do a really intense, jury selection process to try to find people who are not tainted by what's been in the media. He's entitled to a fair trial. And justice is supposed to be blind, which means that the jurors learn about the case in the courtroom and not in the court of public opinion. And so that would be what I would do. You might do what they call a change of venue as well, although this has national attention, so I'm not sure how productive that would be. But change of venue means you pick a different location to try the case because it's gotten too much local publicity. I think it's also bears mention when you were talking about the age difference, sometimes things are different in Hollywood, although the law for statutory rape is not. So he's got really big issues dealing with that, assuming that that's one of the things that he's charged with. But like Elvis Presley and Priscilla Presley, they had a 10-year age difference. He was a 24-year-old man and she was a 14-year-old child when they got together. And people tout them as having one of the greatest love stories of our time because, over time, people forget the fact that the definition of what he was doing was also pedophilia.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's go back to you one more time, Attorney Carter, because this is still the answer that I need for you to help me understand. Now, for those who don't know, they took this case and all the evidence to a grand jury. All right, 6 months ago, the grand jury could not find an indictment, meaning of all the evidence that they found, they were not convinced that they could rule on an indictment on this young man. So from what Harvey said on TMZ, he said that the DA then got upset and started a different process. Can you explain this to us?
Sure. And so we've all heard the expression, right, that you can get a ham sandwich indicted, right? And the reason for that is that at a grand jury proceeding, the prosecution comes up and just presents evidence. There's no cross-examination. There is nothing the defense isn't even there. And then the grand jury decide if everything the prosecution is telling me is true, is there enough evidence to bring this to trial? It's a very low standard, right? And so that's the way people go to trial sometimes. It's an easier way to get to trial. But it's also expensive. It takes time, et cetera, because grand jury doesn't meet every day. They meet like once a week. So something you do is you just go right to the judge, which is what they're doing here.
No.
So they're going to have a preliminary hearing.
No. That's not what I'm asking here. That's not what I'm asking here, counselor. I want to be clear that the A-listers understand that the grand jury heard this case for 6 months and they couldn't find an indictment. I think it's very important for everybody to hear this clearly, that they could not find anything to indict the young man on allegedly. So how are you in front of the grand jury for 6 months straight and you can't get an indictment? However, what is the process that now the DA can then say, all right, you guys aren't indicting him. Now I'm going to take it to a judge. What is the judge going to see any differently that the grand jury didn't see?
The law. The judge is going to see the law. The judge is trained on the law. So certain things that when you pick a grand jury, it is us. It is our peers. And if there are things, they could have looked at things like, he looks like he's a young kid. He's 21 years old. This all happened when he was younger. They don't want to do this. You don't know. The judge is just going to look at the law and look at the
I get you. I think you guys are missing my point here. I understand that you're going to get the law, but the grand jury saw the dead body in his trunk. The grand jury saw the chopped up charge.
But again, the grand jury doesn't.
What law is going to explain to me anything different than what they explained to the grand jury is all I'm asking.
Well, what Attorney Weiss is making the point that the grand jury is comprised of lay people who are interpreting what's being presented to them, and they may miss it. You know, how many times have we discussed cases where we think the jury got it wrong here, the regular jury? In this case, instead of the grand jury being the interpreter of it, you have the judge who actually is more acquainted and knowledgeable about what the standards are. And so that may result in a different outcome.
Got it. Okay. So let's go to some of the comments really quickly. I see we got some super chats. All right, Tracy Odom. Tracy Odom, thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. And Tracy Odom, I thank you for sticking with us and watching us every week faithfully. Also, we got another super chat with a new person. No, not Rizlan. This one here, right? Well, I thought we did. Did I miss that?
Yeah, we do. We have it. Ask Michael.
Yeah.
Ask Michael. Why is that not? Al, they have a bunch of new evidence. Yes. Okay. So they have a bunch of new evidence. That's what they're banking on. Let me see. Where is this super chat, guys? Hang in there with me. I want to make sure that we highlight our super chat people. My apologies.
You just had it. There you go.
There we go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's read some more of the comments. Right here, Daniel Cameron said that man killed that child because his career was on the up and he didn't want it out that he was sleeping with a child. Okay, that's interesting. Let's keep going. JP Mill said, I saw he may be charged with federal and local criminal charges. Yes. All right, Nisha Phillips says, I got to wait to see what happens in court. I just don't believe he thought he was going to get away with leaving it. But I don't either. Something in the milk ain't clean. I'm telling you guys, like Caramel 1977, something in my shanana is not shanine, okay? Something in this is just does not seem right, because if it is right, I think he's sick. Let's go to Christine R. Christine R said there's something sadistic about him. I think he was sacrificed. I think he's been protected by whoever planted him into the industry. He won't be convicted, just my opinion. Ooh, that's very interesting. That's Jason's friend. Also, let's see what Daniel Cameron said here. Daniel Cameron says, parents don't parent the way they used to. Back in the day, the most dangerous things we did was starting to run home once the street lights came on. Yeah, that's a
Yeah, because if you weren't home by the time the streetlights were on, you were getting a whooping. We all know that.
Yeah, nobody whoops anymore.
No,
including Shaitan.
you
I
can't
know,
say the
that's
word
what my
whoop.
children are like, well, we won't talk about them. But one quick
Yeah.
thing for the algoriters or for the A-listers to know that
Mm-hmm.
that is known now that wasn't known before is what's on his phone. So as we were
Mm.
talking about in Chambers, there have been some illicit images found on his phone, and there's some pretty strict laws about that, federal laws, and they're really the equivalent of strict liability. If you have child pornography in your possession, if you happen to open it, then you have committed a federal crime. And so this is very important for the A-listers, for their children, and for themselves. If somebody forwards you something that they think is funny and you happen to know is child pornography, do not open it ever. Period. The end. You cannot be in possession of it, and neither can your children. So your daughters should not be sending naked pictures to their boyfriends, and vice versa, because otherwise they've committed federal crime.
All right, Brenda K says, I'm torn on this one. I need to see more. I'm kind of torn too. I really hope that I'm right, because I don't want to think that somebody like that is just this gross and this low down and disgusting. I just find it interesting that the case has been going on for 6 months and they just now found something on his phone.
But let me ask you this.
Trying to track a guy, track the death of a young lady who was just with the guy, the first thing you do is check his phone. Why is it just coming out 6 months later of something that they allegedly just found on his phone? I'm just saying, think about it. That's a little weird to me. Go ahead, Attorney Carter.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing is, I don't know. I want to say this, is that, you say, for instance, I don't want to believe this about David. I don't either, but guess what? We know somebody did this horrible thing.
Yes.
All right. It didn't cheat. So somebody did it, and we would like somebody to be brought to justice. And the chances are that someone did this independently of him, then found his car that just happened to be left on a street somewhere, put his body in the trunk of his car. No, I didn't know what car he drove. I didn't even know who he was. All right. And so it's highly unlikely that this is all some setup that's done by, I don't know, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, it looks like it's pretty obvious that he did it.
Okay. All right. From the heaviest case of the night to a divorce situation where privacy allegedly got treated like a suggestion instead of the law. All right, next up, we have Lisa Hochstein. Welcome to Celebrity Court. This case is messy because it sits at the intersection of divorce, privacy, revenge, evidence, as well as emotional decision-making. And let's be honest, when people hear divorce, they sometimes think that anything goes. They think the gloves come off. Well, guess what? They think in spying and recording and screenshotting and tracking and collecting receipts is part of the war. But the law says what? Otherwise, here's the legal hinge. If someone, A-listers, if someone intentionally intercepts private communication without consent, that can create serious criminal exposure. And once an alleged recording device is involved, the case becomes about evidence. Who placed it? Who knew about it? Who recorded it? And was there consent? Was there intent? Was the device recorded properly? And can the chain of custody be established? And can the state prove that this was not just messy divorce behavior, but criminal conduct? All right, Sean Carter, you're the one that put this on the docket. I need to know exactly what you mean. So you're saying to me that if I called my significant other or if I thought that they were cheating, I couldn't put little booby traps in place to see if what my feelings were saying to me were correct? You're saying that that's criminal?
Well, at least not in Florida, you can't. And so this is Jason's fault. But also, I put this up here, and you're right. I suggested this case because I think Shaitan needed a reminder.
As she was at the NFL draft trying to pick up one of those studs.
Your business. How you get this straight?
Yeah, exactly.
Bringing me in this.
So let me tell you what happened. Okay, this case, if you know, is the Real Housewives of Miami, and this woman, Lisa Hochstein or Stein, she was married to Lenny Hochstein, who is known as the boob god. And the reason is that he is if you need new hoo-ha or titties, you need to go to him. All right. In Florida, he's a guy who'll hook you up. He's done 30,000 of them. And that's her claim to fame, is that she was wife of the boob god. They a couple years ago in 2002, they start getting a divorce, 2003, and they're fighting. And she says, hey, I think he's probably hiding money from me.
2003.
2003. I'm hiding. He's probably hiding money from me. What?
23 or 03?
I'm sorry, you're right. 23. I apologize. 23. You're right. And he says, you know what? He's probably hiding money from me. Probably got all kind of women. He's around boobs all day. I need to bug his car. So she got her boyfriend, which, by the way, I mean, her milk wasn't clean either. All right, but her boyfriend bought some recording devices on Amazon. She said, "Hey, let me borrow your Mercedes Maybach, honey, because I want to see if I want to get one. Let me test drive it." And so when they had his car, they installed the device, and by the way, decided, I guess, they would christen the car and do a little something in his car too, between the two of them. And these fools turned on the recording device. So it was actually, we got the recording of them doing in his car, and the recording of them going, okay, is it set there? Is it good? Good. So they basically have incriminated themselves. Okay. He gets in the car, and being, I guess, a guy who notices big old things, says, hey, wait a minute. I didn't leave this box here. And pulls it out and says, hey, this is a recording device. By the way, this is discovered in 2023, 3 years ago. But he's going through this tough divorce. They do some settlement. She gets child support, etc. And somehow this year, or 2025, the Florida DA says, you know what, we need to pick this up. We need to pick this up. And I think Jason can explain, there's probably some local politics going on there. And they decide they're going to bring this case, bring a felony charge against her for recording without consent. And the crazy thing to me, and why as an A-lister, you never want to do this, even if he had incriminating evidence, like he was hiding assets from her, or he was doing whatever, it wouldn't matter, because she could never use that information in court.
Yep.
By law, you cannot introduce evidence that's illegally obtained in the court. So I don't know why she would even want the information. She couldn't use it. Her attorney couldn't introduce it. It was completely stupid. All she could do was get some jail time, but hopefully that sex they had in his car was good.
Remember from law school, the fruit of the poisonous tree. So if the poisonous tree is there and it's bad, and the fruit comes off and it looks good, the fruit is still bad. And that's what was going on here. So Florida is a dual consent recording state, meaning that both people, the person doing the recording and the person being recorded, must be aware. That's why a lot of times when you hear these, this call may be recorded for quality purposes and training, you can say no, you can say yes, but some states you don't need to say that to. But you're always going to look at the state that has the more rigid. So if you're calling from a state that it's not there and you're doing something in Florida, dual consent. Same thing here. One of the things that I thought originally was that maybe he was on the phone talking about clients, talking about medical, and there were HIPAA violations going on. And maybe that's what happened. Maybe he was opened up to exposure for that. He had to rat her out. Then the DA had to take action. There are so many things going on here. But yes, Attorney Carter, there are probably politics at play.
All right, Shaitan, before we go to you to find what is the lesson for our A-listers, let's get to some of these comments. Essa Stone said, never heard of these folks. Maybe I'm old. Daniel Cameron said, Essie, go, girl. This is a housewife of Miami. And then Daniel Cameron said, you're not old, Essie. No one watches that franchise. Happy Mills says, dumbest criminals that he's ever seen. Michael said her face looks like it hurts badly. Oh, God. Colette Davis said Lenny was mean to Lisa. He cheated on her with a younger version. Well, duh. Like naturally. All right. JB Bill says Florida is a two-party state. Christine R said, is that Lisa Pliner? Rizzler 11 says, I think in Texas you can record phone calls without saying something. Is that true? Does anybody know? Because I had someone.
Yes, there are single consent that you can do it. But again, if you're calling into a state that has dual consent,
right,
you
exactly.
must know.
That was the thing. I was a part of a situation like this. Someone that I worked with tried to record me. I lived in a state where I had to consent. So they basically did an illegal act and act like it was legal because in their state, they could do that type of nonsense, but I didn't live in their state. That's very interesting. All right, let's go to you, Attorney Turner. Tell us the lesson here for our A-listers who may think recording is, fair game.
The biggest lessons for the A-listers is don't think that you can get a JD on Google. So people get ideas, they go online, they go on Instagram, they see people with all of these gotcha moments because they recorded, and they think everybody can do it, right? Wrong. That's the lesson in this case. As Attorney Weiss indicated, you need to understand the law in the state where you're making the recording. And I would just have a little bit of a nuance, and I wouldn't call it dual party consent. It's actually all party consent. So if all of us were on the yacht that Attorney Ross promises he's going to have us on in Miami, and we were all having a conversation, if Attorney Weiss and I agreed to the recording amongst ourselves and one of us were recording it, but all of us were actually having the conversation, then we would also be committing a felony. And it's actually one of the most common things that I cite in my day job, because somebody's always thinking that they have some evidence. And because I know what the rules are, I have never, Attorney Carter, engaged in that kind of activity myself.
And I want to clarify. I want to clarify one thing, that the law in Texas is that it's a single consent, but it's single consent as long as you are one of the people on it. She was not one of the people on that call. She was recording his. So if they were in Texas and she was recording a conversation between the two of them, and then she could make an argument, but you have to be one of the people.
All right, let's really quickly jump in. I want to get to one of these comments. Michael said, Al, here we go. Let me see here. Al, you haven't made up with Claudia yet. Made up with her. Made up with her. Am I on the outs with her? I made up with her. There's nothing for me to make up. And he says, no, in Texas, you must let the other person know the call is being recorded. Daniel Cameron, so the lesson is invest your sugar daddy's money well, because you'll be traded in for a younger model. I just feel like that's how it is. I just feel like that's how it is in Miami. Okay, really quickly, I want to know the question that I have, and any attorney can answer this. What does it mean that if the recordings were actually recovered, what is a chain of custody? What does that mean?
That has to do with whether or not there was an opportunity for the evidence to be tainted because it wasn't delivered from the person who made the recording directly to law enforcement. And so what you would say is that you made the recording, assuming you got caught up, and said, but, attorney, well, pretend he's not an attorney, pretend he's just your homie. Sean Carter had it, Jason Weiss had it, Shaton Turner had it. Now, I don't know what's on the recording. They could have sliced and diced it. They could have done whatever. It's a bigger thing if the recording is being presented for the truth of the matter asserted, right? If you're using it as a piece of evidence, then you want to be able to say you can't trust that evidence because it's been with too many people or it was left abandoned and anybody could have gotten it. And one term that we didn't say that relates to these types of recordings that makes them unlawful is surreptitious recording. And so it means that the recordings are made in private without the knowledge of the other person. If instead, like I have my phone like this and I'm recording, if you keep talking, there's definitely an argument to be made that you consented to the recording and I didn't do it surreptitiously, and so it's not unlawful.
All right, let's go to the jury real quick on this case right here with Lisa Hochstein. Jury, A-listers, where are you standing on this one? Do you think she's guilty or not guilty? Or is this just messy divorce behavior that should have stayed in family court?
Just lock her up and throw away the case.
Do you think she should have been allowed to record him? I just want to know from a public opinion. Do you let's throw the law out the window. Do you think she should have been allowed to record him, guilty or not guilty?
Really? Well, and we should be clear that the law in Florida says that actually it's a crime to intercept communication. So that doesn't just mean you put a recording device on. that means you need to stay out of, and I'm talking to my wife here, my DMs. You need to stay off the Instagram. You need to stay out of my stuff, woman. No, but seriously, you going into someone else's Instagram or whatever, and in their DMs is illegal in Florida, at least. Unfortunately, I live in Arizona.
What about you going into other people's DMs, counsel?
He's in Arizona. It's okay.
I think it's okay, which is why it explains why my wife gets to do it.
Exactly.
I think this is interesting. Editor said not guilty. Danielle Cameron says she's guilty of not investing in her Birkins. Let's see who else. Jenna Lee says guilty, and Chaos God says guilty. I thought that was interesting. Editor says not guilty. Not guilty. This is a good one. All right, let's keep it going. From alleged recording and privacy problems to a case where the court already gave a verdict, and guess what? Somebody wants their money. Now, let's go and talk about Todd Chrisley. Yeah, you know Todd Chrisley, the guy who just got out of jail. Because this is what happens when the internet turns into evidence, and the evidence turns into a judgment, and the judgment, guess what? Turns into debt. Now, a former Georgia tax official reportedly won a $750,000 judgment tied to alleged online accusations. Now the issue is not just what was said, the issue is collections. And this is very different courtroom conversation because once there's a judgment, the question changes. It's no longer who was right. It becomes show me my money. All right, Attorney Carter, tell me what's going on here. And was there a way possibly that Chrisley could have handled this differently?
Yeah, I need to stay off the damn podcast. And by the way, we have this case almost every week, right? Somebody goes on a podcast, says something they wasn't supposed to say, and then they get in trouble. In this case, Chrisley in 2020 had all of his tax problems, right? And one of the problems he had was that the state of Georgia said, hey, you owe us a bunch of money. He went on his podcast and said that this woman who worked for the Georgia Department of Revenue was corrupt. She was crooked. She was, she basically, sleeping with all the stuff, right? And she can't be trusted. And she got mad and said, no, you're not going to lie on me. Took him to court, got a $755,000 verdict against him, which was great for her, except for the fact that, as we talk about a lot, you got to now get the money. And he is not going to hand it to her. First of all, he can't hand it to her anyway because he only makes 13 cents an hour in jail now, right? And so she says, I want to go take your stuff. He didn't have any stuff in Georgia. So now she's filed an action in Tennessee where he's got his stuff to say, okay, I want my stuff. And this is what the case we're dealing with now. She's trying to get her $755,000. The problem she has is that he still owes the feds. I think it was $17 million or something. And guess who's the most priority creditor? Guess who gets their money first before everybody else? The feds.
The IRS.
So assuming he's made $18 million in prison, because maybe he said he makes a hell of a good prison hooch, she probably not going to get her money.
All right.
Well,
go ahead.
So it was a $17.2 million verdict having to do with that he stole money from banks.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah, good point.
And so it's not really the federal government. It's the banks that are going to try to go ahead and collect. And what she did is she got her judgment in Georgia, and now she's domesticating it in Tennessee so that she can go after the things in Tennessee. The best part is, didn't Trump pardon him? But guess what? All of this still follows him. It's not forgiven by a Trump pardon.
So, Attorney Turner, how does this case usually end? Does he go on a payment plan? Is there a settlement? What happens?
It's layaway. Todd Chrisley's going to get a layaway plan, and he's going to, live according to that. No, I'm just kidding.
Donate blood.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes bankrupt, right, then she will go in the order that she's assigned by the bankruptcy court, and so then she'll become a creditor. And so that's what she is. She's a creditor. And so we'll see what happens. There's a possibility that, if I were him, I would file a brief pleading my hardship and trying to get a remitter or a reduction in the amount so that, I could get some relief from it. And, because if not, she could also try to execute on it and find him in contempt, and then he could find himself back in jail. So what's happening for Mr. Chrisley is contrary to what his show says. Chrisley does not know best. Chrisley should have made different decisions, so he never had this judgment against him.
Christine R says, F Todd, he's a fraud. I never liked him. Nisha Phillips says, oh, Todd, It's some money mess again. Daniel Cameron said, listen, I love me some Todd. He got a black woman deep inside his little soul. Todd ain't guilty. Chaos God says, Todd missed prison. Y'all are messy. Bill says, I hope he knows Trump's can't pardon this. He can pardon the criminal stuff, but he can't pardon the debt. Is that correct?
Yeah, the debt doesn't go anywhere. He could just get him out of jail or pardon the conviction or do whatever, but he still has to pay it. That's not going away.
Got X Michael said, Todd is truly an old white woman at the heart, a true Karen. Christine R said in sidebar, he needs to come out of the closet and live. I guess she meant live in his truth. Brenda K says, I'm waiting on Diana and Michael with those pictures floating around. Who will be in divorce court first? I don't think they can go to divorce yet. All right, well, let me ask you this then. What's the lesson here?
Bora
Bora looks better and better.
He should move out of the country.
Is get Russell Simmons travel agent. That is
it doesn't look like he's hurting for anything, though. How is that possible?
LLCs, protections, trust, bankruptcy, the fact that he is still married. It's hard to get marital assets just because they're his. I mean, he's got, look, there's plenty of ways to make sure that what you think is yours can stay yours. I'm not saying it's his, but what he thinks is his can stay his.
Okay. Attorney Carter, how dangerous is it for public figures to make factual accusations they can't back up?
It's really bad. I mean, unless you're broke. But if you got anything, and we keep saying every week somebody is bringing a case, and here's the weird part is, had he made those same accusations in the trial he had, when Georgia came after their money, had he done it in the right form, you can say anything in court. It's not going to be defamation. But to the extent you want, and here's what I don't get. What do you think the people on the podcast are going to be able to do for him anyway? We see this all the time. People want to, litigate their relationship on a podcast. Podcast can't award you child support. The only person you should be telling these things to are to your lawyer and to a judge. Everybody else needs to, you need to keep people out of your business.
Well, Shaitan, I'm gonna go to you for one more thing, because this is the part that I've been listening to you guys for over a year now talk about defamation. I need to know, and can you break it down for me, because I'm slow, and the A-listers, what is the difference between opinion, insult, and a potentially actionable accusation? Like, he can't say in his opinion, he can't say this is what I think. What happened to those days?
Nothing happened to those days. You can still make an insult, offer your opinion. We've talked about this in recent weeks. The difference is that for defamation, a defamation claim to be able to be filed, you had to have presented the information as if it was fact, and it was when you knew it was a lie, right? So if I'm like, I think Sean Carter is really into slips. Well, that's a bad example because everybody knows Sean Carter is really into slips. But I could say something else, like he really likes hot chocolate, right? We'll just keep it benign. And
that's not benign.
Hates. I didn't even think about that Freudian slip. But he hates hot chocolate, right? And I'm just saying, it's my opinion. I think he likes it. That's not me attributing it as fact to him. That's putting myself as someone who's guessing about what he likes. But if instead I come out and I definitively say Sean Carter's favorite beverage is hot chocolate, that is a statement that I'm presenting as fact, and it's not fact. Now, that's a silly example because it wouldn't cause him any harm unless there are perverts out there like Attorney Weiss. But that, it's just a completely benign statement.
Okay.
And
I will see you in court, Attorney Turner.
And maybe a better distinction is not just I think it's his favorite drink, but I saw him drinking it on this date at that place. When he told his wife he was having tea, right? It's the kind of thing where you make definitive statements of things that you say you saw that are fact, as opposed to just simply saying, I think that Jason secretly likes hot chocolate. That's fine.
I do like hot chocolate.
I don't know. Listen, hold on. According to Christine R, she says I have hot chocolate on the
Oh Lord.
I wasn't even thinking about that kind of hot chocolate when I'm
And here I go turning red. Thank you, Christine R.
Just nasty. All right. From a $750,000 judgment chase to a lawsuit that sounds petty until you remember contracts and reputations are both extremely expensive. All right, everybody. This is the last case of the night, and it is involving our beautiful rapper, Ice Spice, who recently got into a slapdown in the local McDonald's. And yes, we're talking about wigs. But do not let the word wig fool you. This is really about contracts, payment, reputation, celebrity power, vendor relationships, and who has the receipts. Now, everybody get in close. A wig company reportedly claims it owed around $20,000 for custom wigs. All right? That it owed around $20,000 for custom wigs. Now, Ice Spice is pushing back in court, arguing that the company is being dramatic and trying to apply public pressure and shame. Now, this is where celebrity lawsuits get interesting because one side says, we did the work and you need to pay us. The other side says, this has been exaggerated because I'm famous. And somewhere between these two positions, the receipts are sitting there waiting to embarrass somebody. All right, now here is the legal hinge. At its core, this sounds like a breach of contract, right? Should be simple. Did someone order the wigs? Was there an agreement? Were the wigs delivered? Were they accepted? Was payment due? Were there complaints about the quality, timing, or performance? That's the basic contract question. But it gets bigger when reputational harm enters the conversation. Now, in this case, they said, we sent you the wigs. You didn't say anything was wrong, but you haven't paid us. All right, Attorney Carter, tell me exactly what this vendor dispute is all about.
All right, so let me see if I can get the facts right this first time. I think it'd be a good first time for everything. Ice Spice in 2024 is going out on her tour, and she says, hey, my hair I need some wigs. I need lots of wigs. I need 25 wigs, and I need them in a week. And they say, fine, we'll stay up all night. We'll do your wigs, and we'll give you a good deal. $20,000 for these 25 wigs. That's only $800 a wig. All right. Apparently, these people, are willing to work for free. But anyway, they make these wigs for her, get them to her, and she just starts ghosting them. Doesn't pay the bill, doesn't talk to them, etc. And then, to make matters worse, she goes online, according to them, and starts bad-mouthing the people, saying, oh, these people don't make wigs for nothing. Don't get your wigs here. And so they're suing her not just for the 20 grand they want. They're suing her to say, hey, you owe us $400,000 because you ruined our whole reputation here. And so this is what they're trying to do. And the question is that who are they going to get to collect this $20,000? Because as you saw from the McDonald's thing, you need to come up on Ice Spice real slow.
Jason, if reputational harm is claimed, what does the plaintiff actually have to show to get real money behind this alleged unpaid balance?
So they actually need to show that either sales dipped or all of a sudden orders were canceled, that revenue has dropped since that, and they need to show something, that ties it directly to it. It's not an impossible burden to prove, but it is not easy. Loss of future revenue, loss of income, loss of all of that, it's very, very hard. But again, canceled orders. If they have something saying, dear wig company, because of what we saw online with Ice Spice, we're not going ahead and we're canceling our orders, there you go. But if it's just, we changed our mind, we don't want it, that's going to be real hard to prove.
Okay, Shaitan, what's the smartest move for a celebrity in a dispute like this? You fight it hard, you narrow the claims, or you settle. And let me explain to you why I asked that. Because I never forget when I was getting married, right? A stylist approached me and wanted to make one of my outfits for the reception. And so, they came, they measured me, and the day they couldn't get the clothes to me in time. So the day of the wedding, they decided to deliver me a garment. Because they were like, oh, I kept asking for it. The day of the wedding, they delivered the garment and it doesn't fit. So I'm just like, first of all, you're late. The wedding is today. It doesn't fit. You can't fix it. So I was like, what am I paying for? Why should I pay this? So what they decided to do was take it to the media. and say that, oh, you know, I was not trying to pay them for their long services of the stuff that they made. So honestly, because I didn't want to deal with all that nonsense, even though I feel like I was in the right, was I in the right? I paid it anyway. Wasn't that some dirty crap?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It, you know, tantamount to extortion in some respects because they wanted the money in order to keep you quiet. And the thing that compounds it, unlike the news you got, which was bad news, we just got a super chat and that's good news. So big ups to Brenda K. But yeah, so in this case, you said, what advice would I give to celebrities? And I say this one tongue in cheek. You know, Ice Spice should have taken the wigs and run and just gone out and be fabulous, because this is something that it's going to follow her. And when I say run, again, the Russell Simmons option, you go to, you know, the island where that doesn't have extradition with US, and so that you can avoid the claims. Unfortunately, who would do that for $25,000 worth of wigs? Like, I'm not really sure. In this case, she needs to pay them. They are likely willing to take a settlement because as long as they can show that they delivered the wigs to her, she at least is on the hook for the wigs themselves, unless she expressed some sort of quality deficiency, and then they would give her a haircut because they didn't meet her needs. As it relates to the reputational damage, I think, as Attorney Weiss said, it becomes a question of receipts and of revenue and lost revenue in that case to show how much that they were harmed by it. But
right,
she's into the deal.
She should have paid. Okay, let's go back really quickly. Sometimes it's just easier, instead of being drugged in the public like she's being drugged right now and made fun of, just pay the money. Especially if you took the wig. There was nothing wrong with them, right, Sean Carter?
You know, I think she said there's something wrong with them. But here's the thing: is that you know, like you said, she took the wigs. If you are, by the way, if you are selling stuff to celebrities, at least get a deposit. And by the way, this works with everything, right? The person who gets the money first usually is in a better position, right? Because it costs money to come get the money back. And so, like you said, all these people are trying to do is basically they inflated it $400,000. They're not going to win the reputational harm, but maybe if they threaten to sue her for 400, she'll give them the 20 grand, maybe 30 grand, you know, for their time in trouble or whatever, pay some of their attorney's fees. But the lesson to be learned is get your money up front, particularly if your client is a rapper. I don't know why people don't know this.
All right, really quickly, let's go to the A-listers. A-listers, what do you think? I'm trying to still figure this one out. Is Ice Spice guilty for being kind of crimey about this? Drop down in the chat. Let me know what you think. Is Ice Spice guilty or not guilty? What are your initial thoughts? Is she guilty? Should she just, if she got the 20-some wigs at the last minute, they turned it around, if they were okay, should she be paying them? Is she guilty or not guilty?
So what I'm saying is, because I'm not in McDonald's, I can say she's guilty, because otherwise she'd come get me. And I apologize to all the A-listers. I said Bora Bora. It's actually Bali. Bali is the place that you go if you don't want to make your payment. So Bali,
right,
Bali,
really quickly, Chaos God says not guilty. SL Warrior says pay up. NY Marie says guilty. Latheria Robinson Smith says guilty. Oh, this is interesting. Rizlan 11 says guilty. She should have returned them. Yeah, why didn't she return them? Nisha Phillips says they meant my why, not trying to work tonight. They meant my why, not trying to work tonight. Okay, and then she says, Nisha Phillips says guilty. All right, that's very interesting. All right, A-listers, now is the time that we go to you, the final deliberation, which is the jury room, to decide who's guilty or not guilty for their wrongdoings tonight. Don't forget, no long speeches, no lawyer dancing. No, it depends, unless it really depends on what you think, because guess what? You are running the docket tonight. All right, let's go, David. David, is he guilty or not guilty for unaliving this young lady? What do you think? Drop down in the chat. Is he guilty or not guilty for unaliving the lady, this young little girl? Drop down in the chat. Is he guilty or not guilty for unaliving? Editor says guilty. Essie Stone says guilty. One more. We need one more. Guilty or not guilty? Is David guilty or not guilty? Everyone, drop down in the chat. Drop down in the chat. Nisha Phillips says, not sure. Colette Davis says, guilty. All right, David, in the court of public opinion, you've been found guilty. Guilty as charged. All right, let's go to Lisa Hochstein. Lisa Hochstein, don't forget, recording device in the car. Is she guilty or not guilty of trying to make the divorce even messier? But is she guilty or not guilty of doing something illegal? Drop down in the chat. Is she guilty or not guilty? Is Lisa Hochstein guilty or not guilty? Drop down in the chat. Is Lisa Hochstein guilty or not guilty? All right, JP Mills says hard face guilty. Chaos God says guilty. And Rizlan11 says guilty. All right, Lisa, unfortunately, in celebrity court, you've been found guilty. Guilty as charged. Todd Chrisley, even though he's funny, is he guilty or not guilty for lying on that lady? Is he guilty or not guilty for lying on that lady and not paying her money? Drop down in the chat. Is Todd Chrisley guilty or not guilty? That Jeffa definitely guilty. Lathea Robinson says guilty. Nisha Phillips says, is that the man or the woman? Chaos God says Todd is guilty. Guilty. JP Mills. All right, Todd, unfortunately, in celebrity court, you've been found guilty. Guilty as charged. Last up, Ice Spice. Is Ice Spice guilty or not guilty of paying that vendor the money that she owed? All right, drop down in the chat. Is Ice Spice guilty or not guilty for paying that vendor the money that she owed? Drop down in the chat. After Sings says, I missed all these cases. All right, is Ice Spice guilty or not guilty? Drop down in the chat. Drop down in the chat. Cardi B want to be guilty. All right, New York Marie says she is guilty. That's one guilty. Is Ice Spice guilty or not guilty? Rizlan 11 says guilty. And Jenna Lee says guilty. Ice Spice, sorry, babe. You might got a knockdown in McDonald's, but you're going to get a knockdown tonight, too, in celebrity court. You get found guilty. Guilty as charged. All right, counselors, let's go back to you because I got a couple of questions I want to ask you these last couple of minutes. And I need direct answers. Let's not take too much time. We only have 3 or 2 minutes here. Attorney Turner, which case tonight was the messiest legally?
The messiest legally? I'm not sure. They were all kind of messy legally, but the one that was the juiciest and messiest to me factually is Lisa Hochstein recording her ex-husband, because
that would be the messiest morally.
Well, just factually, right? Because she and you put a boyfriend in there and she's trying to get her husband for like cheating and other stuff. Like, how are you going to have any moral ground whatsoever when you're bringing your boyfriend to try to bring down your husband? So I just thought that one was really funny. And then you compound it with a felony charge. And so that's the one that I thought was the messiest.
All right, Attorney Carter, which case tonight is the messiest legally?
It's got to be the David case because we still can't figure out what's going on there. I hope that we come to some resolution. The thing about it, the thing that's going to be interesting about his case, though, is trying to figure out. All right, it looks so guilty, but it almost looks too guilty. Like, and I think this is where a lot of people are confused. It's like, who would do something so crazy as to put a body in the trunk of their car and then just go off on tour like no one's going to notice it, right? It seems almost too easy, but it's hard to argue in court. My client is too stupid to do this when you on video with a 14-year-old girl for a lot because you look kind of stupid a lot. And so it's possible that you were that stupid.
Or somebody that was trying to protect David when he went on tour took care of it, and maybe David really doesn't know about it. I do think that's the messiest and the juiciest, and also I think we got a super chat from Brenda K. So we want to make sure that we thank Brenda K for that super chat. So thank you.
That was from earlier.
Hey, we always got to thank Brenda K.
Thank you again for the super chat. All right, let's go to you, Jason. And which person on tonight's docket has the most public image damage now?
Definitely David. But that's it. I mean, everybody, he is now being accused in the media of the damage to unaliving this young lady. You got so many things: child porn, pedophilia, statutory grapes, and things like that. So this guy's done.
Okay, cool. Tonight's lesson is simple then. Criminal court does not care how famous you are. That's it. Privacy laws do not care how messy your divorce is, ma'am. You can't do that. Judges do not care how loud you were online. And guess what, Ice Spice? Vendor contracts do not care how big your hair is. Fame gets attention. It does not always get grace. It does not always get privacy, and it definitely does not always get the benefit of doubt. So before you post, before you record, before you accuse, and before you ignore an invoice, remember this. The internet may give you applause when the light is on you, but the law may give you consequences. I'm Judge Al Reynolds, and this is Celebrity Court of Public Opinion. Be sure to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. If you're already subscribed, don't forget to hit that share button. Don't forget to turn on your notifications. And last but not least, please, please, please follow us at Celebrity Court of Public Opinion on Instagram right now. And also, while you're in the chat, drop the next case you want to see on our docket. Drop it right now. Everybody, thank you so very much for watching Celebrity Court. Court is now adjourned.